Let me tell you what really went down when the HOA president tried to take my family's cabin, and why I still say the only thing scarier than a mountain lion in your driveway is a bored lawyer with a clipboard. You want a hook? Try this. You don't belong here. Hand over those keys now. That's what Brenda Hartwell, designer Boots' lips set in a smile sharp as barbed wire, said as she stood in the doorway of my grandfather's cabin, a place my family's owned since '63. Those keys had been in my pocket since the day the old man taught me how to start a fire without burning the place down. Now she wanted them. Not happening. Her grin went colder than a January wind. Fine. Keep the keys. But I'm calling the police. So I kept them naturally. About 20 minutes later, sheriff's deputies came knocking. She'd reported me for illegally possessing the keys to my own inherited property. There I am showing deputies probate papers on the porch, while half the neighborhood circles like vultures taking it all in. Cops called on a man for keeping keys to his own family's house. Just another day in paradise, I guess. What Brenda didn't know, I'm not just any electrician. I've spent decades building military-grade security systems for folks who trust no one. When a Karen calls the cops over my own keys, that's when I start thinking about locks that'll keep her up at night. I didn't know yet this would spiral from neighborly nuisance to federal charges, but as you'll see, that's exactly where this mess was heading. I'm Miles Blackwood. I've spent 23 years wiring up security for ranchers who worry about rustlers, tech millionaires hoarding trade secrets, even the odd survivalist convinced the world's ending next Tuesday. But the job that mattered most was guarding Grandpa's cabin, a hand-built marvel up in Pine Ridge, Colorado, 40 acres of wilderness where you could watch trout dart in the creek and hear the wind whistling through pines older than the town itself. Every summer as a kid, I'd spend months in Grandpa's workshop learning to fix engines, splice wires, and most importantly, defend what's yours. Locks keep honest people honest, son, he'd say, sliding his wire-rimmed glasses up his nose. But for the dishonest ones, you get creative. His hands could repair anything, motors, radios, even neighbors who forgot their manners. When Grandpa passed last year at 91, the inheritance was simple. No drama, no debt, just 40 acres of Colorado freedom, every square foot steeped in family stories and worth nearly $800,000 on paper. No mortgage, no liens, nothing but clean mountain air and memories that stuck like sap. 3 months after inheriting, I'm out on the deck swapping boards when I hear tires crunching gravel. Brenda's silver Mercedes glides up like a land shark. Out she steps, perfectly styled, silver hair, hiking gear that costs more than my truck, clutching paperwork like a weapon. Rumor had it she'd left some cutthroat law firm in Denver, bought herself a mansion, and wormed her way into HOA president within 6 months. Folks in town said she'd been reforming the place ever since. She wastes no time. Mr. Blackwood, you're in violation of our community guidelines. She's flipping through forms like she's auditioning for a role in the Paperwork Chronicles. That rustic log exterior is non-compliant. Solar panels are eyesores. And your ancient pickup. It's not consistent with standards. Her Mercedes diesel fumes mixed with the scent of pine and wood smoke like pollution at a church picnic. I tell her politely as I can, this cabin predates the HOA by decades. My grandfather built this when your gated community was still bare country. She never misses a beat. Pine Ridge HOA has jurisdiction now. You've got 60 days to comply, estimated cost $45,000. Or we'll slap a lien and force a sale. That's when it hits me. This wasn't about aesthetics. This was the start of a full-scale land grab, and I was just the next target. Still, I tried being reasonable. Get off my property, I said, quiet but firm. Her grin sharpened. 60 days, Mr. Blackwood. Clock's ticking. She peeled out, gravel flying, leaving me standing there listening to the creak and Grandpa's old advice echoing in my head, dishonest folks require creative solutions. I wish I'd seen Brenda's next move coming. For all my years dealing with difficult clients, I underestimated how dirty someone can fight when there's money on the line. 2 days later, I'm at a construction site when my phone buzzes. Sheriff's Department wants me down at the station. Brenda's accused me of theft of my own cabin. For a minute, I just stand there, the world suddenly watching as my reputation gets dragged through the mud. In mountain towns, your word is your bond, and Brenda had just put mine up for auction. The sheriff's deputy, a good guy prefers fishing to paperwork, slid the file across the table. This looks like nonsense, Miles, but when someone files charges, we gotta check it out. She claimed I'd forged inheritance papers and that the cabin was community property. Problem is, Fraud charges stick around even if you're cleared. Brenda wasn't trying to get me jailed. She was poisoning the well, making the whole town suspicious, vicious, and entirely illegal. I spent the weekend in courthouse basements breathing stale air and flipping through dusty property records. Persistence paid off. Most folks don't realize Colorado law says HOA charters expire every 25 years unless renewed. Pine Ridge's original charter had expired back in 1987. Brenda's authority was about as real as monopoly money. But the real smoking gun came from Property Sales Mountain Vista Development, a shell company run by her boyfriend Rick, had been snapping up properties dirt cheap, always right after owners suddenly faced mysterious compliance violations. So I filed harassment charges, requested restraining orders, and started my own paper trail. Brenda doubled down, calling an emergency HOA meeting. She accused me of being dangerous, unstable, a threat to the community. She waved evidence around, none of it real. But then Frank, a retired FBI forensic accountant, and my neighbor stood up and called her bluff. "The only threat I see is you," he said. Other neighbors piped up, disabled veterans, single moms, elderly couples. Everyone had a story about Brenda's bogus violations and extortion. Turned out she'd squeezed over $180,000 in special assessments from families, all routed into Mountain Vista's pockets. That's when Eleanor Denver, a widow who'd lost her husband to a stress-induced heart attack fighting Brenda's fake septic fines, handed me a folder full of forged documents and damning evidence. Brenda had targeted 6 families, all vulnerable, all forced out under fake rules. After that, Brenda switched tactics. Every morning, unmarked trucks showed up at the edge of my property. Guys in hard hats pretended to inspect things, always staying just far enough back not to be trespassing. The air reeked of diesel and intimidation. I upgraded my security, motion sensors, infrared cameras, automatic cloud backups. If they wanted a fight, I'd give them a digital one. Soon even the county got involved. Inspector Dale, a good man, came by to check fire risks in my solar setup. "Your grandfather's work is museum quality," he said after checking everything. But off the record, he whispered 6 bogus complaints in 1 month, all from the same source. Something stinks. My cameras eventually caught Rick's crew dumping trash on my land, planting evidence for environmental violations. Frank helped me catalog everything, and then Jerry from the power company showed up. Someone reported illegal connections. After an hour, Jerry said, "This is insane. Whoever filed this couldn't tell a neutral wire from a garden hose." Anonymous complaints meant potential service shutoffs, a classic harassment play. The deeper I dug, the more I found every targeted property got bought by Mountain Vista at half price, then flipped to city folks for full value. The same names came up in every scam: Rick, Brenda, and her sister-in-law, a county building inspector. Then came the bombshell: my cameras caught Rick's guys planting bags of white powder near my solar inverters. Next morning, anonymous tips hit the sheriff's desk, allegations of a drug lab. Brenda's endgame was asset forfeiture. If she couldn't buy my land cheap, she'd have it seized. But I had every minute of it on tape, crystal clear, with timestamps, plates, everything. I called the FBI. The feds had already started tracking HOA property fraud but lacked proof. Now they had it. Brenda, though, wasn't done. She launched a social media smear campaign, fake Facebook groups, photoshopped images of my cabin turned into terrorist compound, even video montages edited to make me look dangerous. Neighbors who barely knew me suddenly thought I was a threat. Sheriff's deputies came by to investigate threats. Meanwhile, my cameras caught Rick's crew breaking in, trying to plant more evidence. Then the insurance company called policy canceled due to high-risk activities. False reports weaponized against me. That's when Frank arrived with bourbon and the truth: Brenda had borrowed millions against future mining profits. She needed my land to make the whole scheme work. The tipping point came when Rick's crew vandalized Grandpa's memorial garden. But a young contractor balked, said, "This is too far." He quit, and later handed me an envelope full of contracts, target lists, and most chilling, a forged county order scheduling my property for condemnation and seizure. As I sorted through documents, I found a faded survey from 1961. Grandpa had run a geological assessment before building. Hidden in the technical jargon was a bombshell: rare earth minerals, lithium, cobalt, tantalum, worth up to $50 million beneath our cabin. Mountain Vista wasn't after a cabin, they were assembling a mining corridor. And the deed Grandpa left me. It included a family ownership clause that kept mineral rights locked up tighter than Fort Knox. Even if they forced a sale, they couldn't touch the minerals. We gathered all the evidence: neighbors, lawyers, the feds. Upgraded the locks, biometric, electronic rolling encryption, you name it. Cameras streamed to the cloud, everything documented. We staged a honey trap, let Rick's crew think the place was vulnerable. The footage was gold break-in attempts, evidence planting, even phone calls with Brenda herself. The FBI moved in. Brenda was arrested at an emergency town hall. Perp walked past the very neighbors she'd bullied. But even in handcuffs, she wasn't done. She posted bond, and the county tried an emergency environmental hazard order to seize the land. Too late. The feds already had everything: emails, financial records, confessions. Deputies served me with eviction, but the sheriff winked. This is cleaner than my tap water. Rick tried to break in one last time with 6 armed men. My locks held alarms, screamed, feds swarmed in. Meanwhile, neighbors rallied, forming a human chain. Veterans groups arriving, news crews descending. Brenda's final call, burn it down, was caught on tape, the last nail in her legal coffin. At the next county meeting, I rolled in with security footage, financial docs, and a crowd of witnesses. Audio of Brenda planning violence played on the big screen. The room erupted. Federal agents made arrests. 6 months later, justice was served. Brenda got 12 years, Rick 7, the commissioner 5. $4.2 million in restitution went to victims. New HOA rules passed, environmental protections secured, and my cabin became a symbol of resistance. Frank's accounting firm helps victims. Now Eleanor started a scholarship. Tom's veteran group supports others. My lock design got licensed nationwide. Best of all, a last letter from Grandpa's attorney revealed another twist: a safe deposit box with more mineral rights documentation. The land's true value, $80 million. I donated it to conservation, making sure no one could ever mine it. So what's the real lesson? Bullies and scammers thrive where people stay silent, but documentation and a united community can shut down even the slickest con. Standing up for your family, even if it means getting creative with locks and paperwork, is worth every minute. Now I want to hear from you. Where do you draw the line on justice, and have you ever tangled with an HOA or bureaucratic bully? Drop your stories below, and let's keep the conversation going, because as I learned, the fight's never really over until you lock the last door behind them.